So I'm recording now. All right, ladies. Maybe there's gentlemen. I don't know. Probably all ladies. Welcome to Claimed Podcast and welcome to this interview. That's also going to be a video one. So today on the call, on the podcast, on this interview, we have a very, very special group of women. Every group of women, every woman that I talk to is very special, but this is like an extremely special group of women. And there are a few reasons for that. So welcome Stephanie, welcome Melanie, and welcome Amelia. All three of you have been on the Claimed podcast with me separately one-on-one when I interviewed you about your journey in working with me and in the Claimed program. Not only that, but all three of you also have joined the program and start working with me when you were already in relationships. So I find that this episode is very, very special because the one that I did previously with Andrea, Ellie, and Bonnie. And by the way, all three of you should know that, and this is already proven because since I released that other roundtable, I've had at least, I think, well, I just released it maybe like 2 weeks ago, but I've had at least 2 women joining the program because they've seen those other women and they're actually like, we're on group calls and they're like, hi, Bonnie, I joined because of you, you know, or like they're tagging these women in the group and they're like, oh my God, I saw your story. So this just shows, you know, what this means to me and what this means to all of the women, because these are the stories that women want to share. And you will definitely be inspiring so many women to not only, you know, just join the program. I mean, this is important, but also to show what is possible and that there's a different way of doing relationships, relating to men and being in your body and things like that. And some of you have even taken it a step further to continue professionally explore the modality of embodiment and things like that. So before we begin, real quick, it's really interesting. I just thought about this. So all of you obviously have worked with me. I think, Melanie, we started working together more than a year ago in a one-on-one capacity when I didn't even have the program. And now you're very far ahead in your relationship, in your marriage. You're already married with a man that we started discussing. And then I think, Amelia, with you, we started working about 9 months ago, around January last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and now you're still in that relationship, and I'm very, very excited to hear where that went. And then Stephanie, you just joined, I think, was it like May or June?
Yeah, yep, May or June, yep.
Right, so, just 3-4 months ago. So,
yep.
Your life has changed in just 3 months, ladies. You should be like signing up right now. But anyways, we'll go into that. So, and before we jump into the call, I was joking about, well, ladies, the more you work with Anna Rova, the deeper your relationship is going to go and the better things are going to be. Obviously, not for everyone, but for a lot of the women. So, yeah, let's begin. I'm really curious about, like if you have any... but obviously introduce yourself and tell us why you're here. You know, what has really prompted you to be on this roundtable, even after we talked one-on-one. And then just telling us about your overall journey, how far you've come since we started working together. So, Melanie, we'll start with you. If you want to share.
Great. So I'm here on the roundtable today because I worked with Anna Rova, indeed, with you and with the other women in the group for quite a long time, for about a year. And what I learned already is that it's really valuable and nourishing to be with a group of women together and to discuss things, whether it's relationships or work or anything else. So I think that's very valuable. So I started working with you 12 months ago. And I think I was in a place where I just was very exhausted from having a full-time job and being the caring person that I am, I guess, naturally. I was just exhausted from giving. And I wanted to explore what I could do about that, what I could find as a kind of balance in my relationship, but also really for myself. And what I liked about this program was that it really looked at the woman as a person and working with the woman. So I think when you go to therapy or you do some other things, it's a lot about you as a couple or the other person or the partner, and they are doing things wrong. And I really liked the fact that we were going to look more into ourselves and grow ourselves. And I think when you start doing something like that, it will help you. Whatever happens along the way, maybe your relationship doesn't survive it, or maybe your job doesn't survive it. But you're working on yourself and you're growing. And for me, that was the most important thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you got to tell us where you are now.
Yeah, so today I'm married to the man of my dreams for sure. And actually, we got married 3 weeks ago, which is a funny story, which we'll maybe get into later. And I'm also pregnant with a little baby boy. So very exciting, and I also feel a lot more balanced in general in life. So I feel like this is kind of a blessing that has come on my way after I've done all the work and after I've done like all the,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the after I've set my boundaries, after I've integrated all the things that I've learned in the program.
Yeah, beautiful. And sorry to put like pressure on you to share your story. Part of me is like, well, like your story, Melanie, is so inspiring because obviously, like, so many women want to get married and want to get pregnant. And that's why I was like, Melanie, let's get this out there. And I just shared your story that you shared with us in the group. But also, and I noted that in my post, and I really want to say this because, as you all know, marriage and babies are not like the end goal for me and my
Mm,
work with women, and I never stress on that specifically. I know that there's so many things out there that is like, I mean, obviously this is amazing, right? But what I always say is like, Melanie, congratulations, but like the work continues and we have to do,
mm,
and the work becomes even more focused now that you are a mother. Well, you are a mother already. Now that you are a wife, the work continues, and it continues forever, pretty much. Which is amazing work. We all love it. That's why we do it. Because for me, marriage and babies, it's actually not that hard. Well, let's not get into fertility
mm,
issues, but when we talk about, we can get a proposal, right, and we can get pregnant in a second, like literally. But that's not the most important. The most important is how do we sustain that. And obviously, there's women in this program who have been married before and that hasn't worked. And so it's all really about sustaining polarity, putting yourself in the most important position, the best position to sustain this polarity in a relationship, in a marriage, but also with motherhood. There's a lot of things that come with motherhood as well. And so my personal journey has been totally transformed when I had a baby. Maybe you, Melanie, kind of get it, but don't get it yet specifically. But
mm,
because this is when everything fell into places for me, where I realized you really can't do it all. And I was literally living the life of female success. And a lot of women who have not become mothers do not really kind of grasp it and get it. But once you understand the animalistic nature, the raw primal mammalic, I guess, nature of you and your body and your system as a woman, then everything comes together. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay. Thanks, Melanie. Well, definitely, I want to get into the story of marriage and all of that in a moment, but let's go around the circle next. So, Stephanie, I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, just tell us why you're here again. Welcome again, double round for you. Why you're here, and kind of like a summary, I guess, where you were before and then where you're here now in your journey.
Um, yes, thank you for having me again. I'm really excited to be here. I I initially seeked out the program itself and your work because I'd been in a long-term relationship that we basically kind of fallen apart and had decided to split up and but we continued to kind of talk to each other and things like that. And so I was kind of seeking answers as to why that had happened and what I could maybe do to fix it. And then when I sort of started in on the program, as Melanie said, it really was addressing things inside of me, the energy inside of me, how I was feeling, and that grabbed me right away. That was really so. I think a lot of women do come sort of searching in response to an external situation, but of course it gets all fixed up because your internal shifts, and that's what this program focused on, and that's why I'm enamored with it. And sort of an update. So it's been several months since my former partner and I split up, but we continue to be on good terms and talk and even sort of date, if you will, while I was going through this program. And sort of very exciting update is, things have been really fantastic. I've really integrated just a really fundamental shifts. I feel like there have been a few shifts, basically probably one a month as I go through the material, and I go, and like something opens up and I go, oh, I get it now. I get it. And then the next month it feels like another level opens. It's like I'm in a video game and the next level's opened up or something. And, I really have felt that a really big opening up of kind of the next level the past sort of 2 weeks, and our conversations have gotten deeper, and he's come to me just recently and basically has sort of said, I want to move forward, sort of return back to kind of exclusivity and living together. And so he's done that himself, which is a complete change in the world from where we were before, because where I was before in my approach to my relationship was demanding things and pleading for things and wanting things and being disappointed if someone wasn't doing something the way I wanted, doing what I wanted the way I wanted, and this is completely different. To have him step forward and lay that out all himself without me having pushed for it is a completely different world. So I'm very, very pleased. I'm in a happy place.
Well, Stephanie, I'm not very pleased that I'm finding out about this in a podcast interview and not like in our Facebook group.
Too.
I'm hoping that you're posting that pretty soon, or maybe you just don't want to jinx it in a way.
Well, there's an element of that, but it's really it's been very recent, really.
Okay, so. Wow. Well, that's awesome. I'm super happy to hear. I'd love to. And I love how you're saying this is like a video game, and you, Stephanie, watching your journey in this program has just been like mind-blowing, because it's so interesting how women, all women who do the work and go through the program and show up on the calls and whatnot, they all see results, but their results are different, obviously depending on their story and where they're at and what they're doing. But seeing you, it's really been like achievement unlocked. It's like one achievement a month unlocked, and you're like either collecting points or whatever, but you're just following that and doing that. So it's been so much fun watching you. So amazing updates. We'll go again around the circle to hear a bit more details on that. So, and then moving forward to the beautiful Emilia. How are you doing,
Hello.
Emilia? Why are you here, and what's your update?
Well, look, I'm here because I live and breathe Anna Rover, actually. I'm not kidding. I go for walks and I listen to the podcast and I tell everyone about you, and everyone knows your name. So any excuse to sit around and talk to you, I'm in.
That's right. Oh, thank you.
But yeah, so my situation when I signed up was I'd been listening to your podcast for some time, and I had been reading all of your articles, and I was in a place where my relationship was going downhill pretty quickly, and I decided that I had to do something, that it mustn't be just the relationship, that there was some sort of work that I had to do. So I contacted you, and shortly after that, everything blew up, and I found myself in a pretty bad place emotionally. And I think by the time we got together, it was, I'd completely split up, moved out from my partner's house. I was starting a fresh life, I thought, by myself and without him. And it was a pretty distressing time, and we started the work. And yeah, so since the start of the year, January or so, I've been gradually rebuilding the relationship with him, and it started out dating, moved on to, officially being back together, and now we're looking at living together in December again. So yeah, moving forward and up and on in the world.
You ladies are just like, what? How, like, that's not Melanie. You should have updated me on your pregnancy or your marriage, like on this round table. Like, I'm disappointed. You guys should have like conspired, and I'm like, what? When did this happen? How do I not know? But anyways, I mean, it doesn't matter whether I know or not. But that's great news, Amelia. I didn't know about that, but I remember like I think with all of you, obviously this journey starts with kind of a mess. You know, you're looking for answers, you don't know what's happening, and then especially when you're in relationships, like when you're I mean, I don't want to compare being single versus being in a relationship, but I guess when you're in a relationship, it's I mean, it can get messy, it can be tough, and then that journey is hard. And so very happy to hear that things are progressing. So now what I would love to talk to you about, because obviously you are in relationships. So with other ladies, you know, the first round table is all about they're single and they're like, oh my God, men are just approaching left and right. I'm changing my beliefs about them and life is amazing. What have I been doing all my life? You know, I've been living under a rock of these like amazing men around. So, but I'm really curious with you because you have been obviously focused on one specific man in your life with your, well, I don't want to say with your whole attention. Your whole attention was on you, obviously, and maybe that's part of what you're going to share. But I'm really curious about your men, you know, and how things have changed for you, within you, and what were some of the biggest, I guess, aha moments through this journey. Like when you look back at before when you started, and you really see that the dynamic shift, you know, within you. I'm really curious about what have you been observing in the relationship and in your man specifically, obviously as a result of the work that you do on yourself. So maybe just a couple of key things. So Melanie, and of course, I think with all of you, let's focus on the key moment or the milestone, right? So Melanie, for you, it was like pregnancy and marriage, right? So let's tie into that. And for you, Stephanie, it was, I mean, obviously achievement unlocked because you were not sure. You were just there. You didn't know what's going to happen. I know for you was the biggest thing of like just being in that uncertainty because, you know, and then he came forward. And for you, Amelia, you know, the decision to start living together again. So if we can tie your story and maybe specific examples that you can share with us, that'd be great. So that, and then tying into, you know, that, I guess, the result to where you are today. So let's kind of shift this around and we'll start with Stephanie first. So Stephanie, you go.
So it was really interesting. I think we'd been together for several years and we actually kind of come from similar upbringings in terms of our both of our parents' dynamics is really similar. Although I do notice that with his, it's a little bit more pronounced. But in both of our parents' relationships, the woman is very much in her masculine. She's very much sort of controlling and coordinating and dictating and things like that. And men, as a result, get quite passive, really, really passive. And so, you know, despite the fact that we'd had a lot of good times, that now when I look back, I can say, I said, yeah, polarity was at play at the beginning of our relationship. I think we fell into we fell into our default sort of upbringing patterns, and that's where things kind of started to go downhill over the course of a couple of years. And so when you talk about polarity, that framework, that was the first thing that blew my mind when I went through the program, because I went, oh, I can absolutely see how it played out in my family, how it plays out in his family, and how that's come together to play out in our relationship. But like I said, at times in the past, there was polarity at play. We did, you know, you were doing the dance. You did feel great. There was that attraction. I think the thing is, since we didn't know the mechanism behind it or the reason behind it, you know, there's no way you'll fall back into unhealthy patterns. And so I think that was kind of my watershed moment where especially this recent sort of shift, this really recent opening up, is that I said, now that I know the principles that are at work, I feel confident that things are not out of my control. It's not a big mystery what's happening anymore. It's not. I'm not worried anymore that we'll ever return to that place that was so stressful, because I understand and I've wrapped my head around what polarity is, what it means to step into, the feminine way of approaching things and allow for him to step forward in a masculine way. And because I know what's going on sort of behind that, the dynamic behind that, I'm really, really confident. That gives me a real sense of security. And kind of as Melanie said, regardless of what ends up happening, regardless of whether it works out or whether it continues this way, I know the principles, I know what's going on, and so I'm not stressed anymore. I'm not worried that it'll spiral out of control anymore. And if I do make a misstep, or I'm sort of feeling, not great, or there has been a miscommunication, I now know sort of how to step back into that. I go, okay, it means if I've made a misstep or there's a misunderstanding, it means I'm not in my feminine. I've fallen back into some kind of old pattern or old thinking, and going through feminine embodiment or something like that will sort of even right the ship. And so that feeling of it's so funny because it's this paradox of I've learned to let go and not worry, and by doing that in that feminine way, I actually feel very secure and in control of what's going on, which is, or at least in control of myself, and I know that I can easily control what happens, what I do.
Wow, that's really beautiful how you put it. It's like when you actually let go of control and stop worrying, that provides you a sense of security and control. But
yes.
not the control that was before, where it was like, I control because there is a fear, there is an insecurity of what's going to happen if I let go. But when you do let go and you lean back and you build that foundation of, like, as you said, no matter what happens, I will be okay. You build that foundation of security. I'm worthy. I am enough. I know this works. I feel it. It's true in my body. Then you're like, well, this is control, as in security is control. Then you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay. So, Stephanie, for you here, I really want to give us an example specifically with your recent situation, right? Like, let's, in the last 2 weeks, like what happened. I'd love for you to describe that situation, the way, like, how did you actually make it happen? Because, I mean, this was quite a long journey for you. You have been in that uncertainty because you laid things on the table and you set up boundaries, and then you were literally like, being in a place where I don't know what's going to happen. Are we going to move forward or not? But you trusted that, and I know you started kind of looking, into other options and things like that. So I'd love for you to explain it to us on a very example, practical level of how that happened.
It's really, really interesting because this sort of shift that you go through in this program, I think, really changed my communication. I love communication. I've always been interested in what makes good communication, and or how things go wrong in communication between people. But it's so interesting to implement good communication practices when your foundation, your emotional foundation underneath it is calm and in a receptive place, especially for women. And I think that was a major, major thing is, so the way that our conversation, so he's been inviting me on dates, as datey as we can kind of get in times like these. And but he's absolutely, we eat dinner over at his house. And I we both treat it like a proper date. So I've been, sort of approaching it as I'm gonna go on a date with this person. And I think the shift really comes from when you're out dating people that you've just met, or you're wanting to get to know. You approach it with an air of curiosity. You go, I want to find out about this person. I think when you're in a long-term relationship and you've lost the polarity, all of a sudden you go, I know everything I need to know about this person. I know how they work. Well, that's not the case, of course. And so I really started approaching our interactions, every phone call and every date and every interaction, with curiosity. I stopped assuming that I knew what this person's deal was, and started approaching it as an actual date. And the amazing thing about that is, of course, so then in the conversations, I stopped talking so much, and started really having honed in questions that were from a place of curiosity. And it's just amazing. Yeah, I've learned all kinds of things, or at least what's going on inside another person's head, that I was just assuming before. I of course had the wrong idea, of course, about what was going on in someone else's head. And I think the best one, and it happened a day or two before, kind of, he brought up this idea of getting back together, was I showed up for the date, and I have been, as I said, approaching all of these dates as dates, and I've been dressing to the nines, again, dressing up as if it's a date. No more slouching around in sweatpants and a t-shirt or anything like that. I look, I take care of myself. I do that kind of ritual of self-worship before going and meeting someone for a date. And I showed up, and wowee, he was dressed up. This was in his own house. This was just, he was going to make me dinner in his own house. And he was dressed up, nice shirt, nice pants, as if he were showing up to a date. And I think that's where it really clicked, because he had, I think it's, the shift happened in me. And of course there's a short leg period for someone else to adjust to you when you change. And, I showed up and I was like, wow, you look great, and he goes, well, it's a date. He goes, I have to look nice for a date. And I went, and that, I think, was, that kind of was my aha moment that helped with that. And then, as I said, we've been having those great conversations, again, approaching someone with curiosity. So that's a really interesting thing. I think it's interesting that we have this group of women who we've all been in relationships with. But as you say, the work never stops. But the work in this case meant actually, seeing your partner or your person with fresh eyes. It's as if we're going to go on a date with someone you'd not met before. So.
Yeah, beautiful. I love what you're saying. So change communication, approach it with the air of curiosity, stop talking so much, and then you're taking care of yourself, where it's a ritual, not because of him, but really taking care of yourself because it's for you. And I'm curious, and I'll ask you, all of you here, I'm curious, Stephanie, what has he been? So, I mean, I bet for a lot of you or all of you, it has been like the men. Because I always, when I talk to women and when I work with women in relationships, I'm always like, well, imagine what's going on your side. So you've enrolled into this program, right? Or you're working with me, and it's like, boom, there's this new woman who's like, I'm done with this shit. I'm going to be in my feminine, and you be stepping up. And so when we really take the other side, the men are like, wait, what? Like, what just happened? Now, like... So I'm curious from your side, Stephanie, what have you been noticing in him, like his progression to, as you said, you allowed him to step into that, because that's a process that doesn't happen in a day. So what has been your view of watching him probably going from like, what the hell just happened, and resisting that, to actually coming to, I guess, his senses or whatever, and actually like coming forward, claiming you and telling you, let's move forward?
Well, one of the things that I think contributed to our kind of the decline in polarity and the sort of split that we experienced was we had both, kind of become dependent on each other kind of for our social life. So I guess you could call it kind of codependent, and we kind of neglected sort of, we were kind of coming home from work and just sort of kind of doing the housework, fighting about, the housework and things like that for a while, and hadn't reconnected with the things that both of us kind of love to do. And that's an interesting thing that happened with, when you split up with someone and all of a sudden you kind of, you set up your life slightly differently, is I reconnected to my art. And funnily enough, it took him a couple of weeks, I think, to kind of get over the shock a little bit. But he reconnected to some really masculine hobbies that he had been neglecting in himself. And so funnily enough, this kind of recalibration towards focusing on ourselves, he actually ended up doing that as well. And the best part about that is he could then, so he kind of, he got that masculine energy from those things that he reconnected with, his hobbies that he reconnected with. And as well, he kind of came back and could tell stories, he could kind of show off a little bit. And I think that's where he started to tap into, because I think if we'd tried to have a conversation about the relationship or something like that, you would have, you would have gotten into that spiral, that kind of emotional spiral that was the problem in the first place. But me reconnecting to my feminine through this program and through art that I used to love to do, and these wonderful sort of feminine activities and connecting with some feminine friends and things like that. And he eventually kind of, I think just simply because you have more time and you're all exhausted as well from kind of this, this event of splitting up. But he eventually went and reconnected with this really masculine hobby, and he found that part of him again, so he could bring that polarity when we finally did get together and interact. So that was really, really unexpected. That when I start focusing on my femininity, that without even thinking about it or talking to him or suggesting it, that you should go off and do this again type of thing, I didn't have to do any of that. He just did it. And so he's stepped, of course, forward in a more masculine way when he's actually with me as well. So.
Wow, yeah, beautiful. All right, thank you so much, Stephanie. We'll come back to you a bit later. So, Emilia, what's coming up for you now, and what are you, you've sent me a link to your man singing and stuff. I was like, what? That's your man? Wow. So I'm really curious. If you didn't know, well, I don't know how much I can disclose. I'm just going to shut up, and you can tell us about it, because I don't want to intrude on your privacy. But what have you noticed, Emilia, with how your man, like in the transformation in your man, and how he's showing up differently now?
Look, so I'm with Mr. Textbook Alpha Male. He's very masculine. He's a businessman. He's highly driven with his concreting business. He is a rapper on the side, so it's very blokey side hobby. He's a fit guy, and we were doing the typical anxious avoidant dance, the back and forth for a long time, and me obviously being the anxious and him being the avoidant. So if you've done any research on that, it's a very interesting dynamic, and it often doesn't work out too well. But what has happened through all of this is, I think, the Maya shift in my femininity and sort of rediscovering that side of myself has allowed him to step forward. So that dance of anxious and avoidant, he's no longer freaking out at me coming at him. And I think that that's because I'm not coming at him. I have stepped back. I'm allowing him to do his thing. if you've listened to the previous podcast I did with Anna, my aha moment was realizing that I'm not his purpose. And that was huge for me. I did a lot of work reading David Data's books on polarity, and that sort of thing of a man's purpose in life not being his woman, that really hit home for me, because I pushed him so much in the beginning, saying, well, like, where do I fit in? Why am I not your priority? Like, when do you put me first? And I put so much pressure on it, and then I realized I'm not meant to be his priority. If I just get on with things and look after myself, he will actually come to me more, and he will relax. He will not see me chasing so much, not see me being so anxious. And yeah, that's exactly what has happened for us. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has he been, I'm really curious, I mean, for you, Emily, has he been telling you anything in like changes or whatever, or it's kind of been like silently in the background, things have progressed?
No, he's very vocal. Despite being, Mr. Masculine, he's quite emotional as well. So he talks openly about his feelings and what's going on and where we're at. So for him, he has said to me, I've noticed this shift in you, and you're just easy now. You're just easy to be around. You're not stressing me, you're not nagging me, you're not pushing me. It just feels good. And for that reason, obviously, he's much happier for me to be moving in with him this time around. It's almost like a no-brainer for him. And he'll discuss openly now the progression of our relationship. He has mentioned the words of marriage, just had conversations with me about children, discuss the future, whereas before, if I were to mention anything about the future, even what's next weekend, he would freak out and back away. He was just, such a commitment phobe, and, so typical textbook avoidant as well. And it created a lot of anxiety for me. And yeah, like I then lost my femininity, not just physically, but, in the way that I was behaving as well. So I was being very blokey. I started going off to the gym and sort of, thrashing myself in a very masculine way. I started competing with him at the gym, which is just ridiculous because, he's an 85 kilo male with biceps 5 times the size of mine. So, and I shifted that into, feminine movement and into more yoga and bar and feminine activities. And then in turn, I realized I'd also lost the way that I looked after myself and dressed, same as what Stephanie was saying, that, no longer like lounging around in trackies, that, you actually put in an effort, and they notice that and they comment. So that's really nice.
Yeah. What was that? I just remembered something. My husband, so I mean, you know how men are. Like, I buy new clothes and he barely notices that, or maybe he notices like 3 days after. I'm like, I've been wearing this for 3 days, and you like, it's just insane. And I remember, it was so bizarre. It was out of nowhere. He's, so I redid my hair, which he obviously noticed, but then it was like totally random. I think I was wearing like a new shirt that was different from my style. And it was hilarious because he didn't notice the shirt, but he said, "Your hair looked amazing today." And I'm like men are just, I don't know. And it was just so incredible to notice that, because they can't even pinpoint what it was. So I think he just kind of saw me and then was like, "Yeah, that's the hair. Like, your hair is amazing." So yeah, really beautiful that. And I've been married for 3+ years now, and been in a relationship for more than 4. So, it doesn't happen just when you're starting. So when you were talking, Emilia, I have 2 questions for you here. Number one, easy to be around. When you said that, and, I constantly talk about that in the program. It's like, that is like when they say, "I feel free with you," or "You're so easy to be around." My husband constantly has been telling me that you're just so easy. You don't hold grudges so much. Like, there's no pushing, whatever. So I think for a lot of listeners here, a lot of women have a problem with like trying to be easy because they know this about men, and putting out a facade and a version of themselves that is easy, but deep down inside, like there's so much going on. So, and you might resonate with that. So I'm really curious, what have you found is the difference from like trying to be easy or whatever, if that has been your story, and actually being easy, not for him, but just because of who you are?
Look, I've done both. Let's say I've dabbled in the trying to be easy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work because it creates more anxiety. I was like, okay, I'm gonna be easy, and I'm not gonna do this, or I'm gonna do this, and I'd set myself little goals, and I would find myself just overthinking it, and it was just not coming naturally. So for me, the shifts have come from allowing myself to just feel in every moment and actually take a pause rather than planning ahead, sort of when this happens, my reaction's going to be this. So every moment with him, I've sort of thought, okay, oops, I'm feeling a bit anxious here. What's going on for me? And, I would pause in that moment and allow myself to feel and to trust. And I would discover very quickly that it was my anxiety and that it was nothing that was going on in the dynamic. Whereas previously I would have, pointed that out. So I think a lot of it comes down to the feminine movement. It comes down to the shift in feeling everything in your body. So whatever feelings arise, working through them, processing them, and that work's got to be done on your own, outside of the relationship, and then it comes into play in the dynamic when you're in a situation with your partner, or whoever the guy is that you're interacting with. It just comes naturally, but the work's got to be on your own. I think I was pushing I'll try and be easy when perhaps I wasn't actually practicing being feminine and doing the work. The work's constant. It's, for me, it's journaling, it's the feminine flow. It's, I dance now as well. I used to be so awkward and so embarrassed about dancing, and now I actually dance in front of him and he's like, you go, you move. So yeah, it's all of that, and it all adds up. And I notice as soon as I drop the ball with something, there's a shift in me, and I go into that trying to be easy, and it doesn't feel good, and I don't get the response from him, really.
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned is really, really key, and that what's happened with me as well. And like, I remember a distinctive moment of, that awareness that happens with us when I feel anxious, and a lot of the time, or, frustrated, whatever you call it, whatever's bubbling up on the surface, our default, especially when we're with a partner, is like, it's him. Even when he did something, we always, our default response is like, well, obviously he did something, so he's at fault, and I feel this and this and that, where a lot of the times, I mean, it actually doesn't even happen with me anymore, but I had to consciously stop myself and say, so before, I mean, it might be him, but in most cases it wasn't. It was just my own shit that I'm dealing with. And so like, what a gift, Amelia, you're giving to your man. And I wish, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I wish my dream world and my vision is to have, I mean, this is what a conscious feminine essence woman does. Before she acts or lashes out or sets out her boundaries or whatever, which is a place for everything, she actually pauses and she takes, this is radical responsibility. When you actually look at, check in with yourself, first of all, I love what you said, pause and feel. Allow yourself to feel and actually sit with that before acting, and really saying, well, is this really him, or is this my shit that I need to deal with? And what can I do about it? Here are the tools that I can use. And I love that you say, obviously, feminine movement and embodiment is such a huge part of, our work together. And also the journaling and all these tools. And I also love that you said the work continues, no matter what stage of the relationship you're at. So
Yeah.
love everything you're saying, Amelia. Thanks for sharing. Last question for you here. Which I love that you are mentioning that. And if, if Stephanie or Melanie, you want to jump into that, I don't know how much Stephanie or Melanie, you dove into, the book Attached, which is where Amelia, I actually have not read the book, Amelia,
So good.
I know it's good. So I, on purpose, am not reading this book because so many women that I get on discovery calls and obviously in the program have read it, and they mention these words. Like, obviously I know what this is about. There is like the avoidant, anxious, and then the secure, right, attachment style, and it goes all the way back and all of that. So I've been having conversations with different people about this, and I'm curious because obviously, like you mentioned this, you being an anxious attachment style, him being avoidant, I can't keep but thinking and wondering, how does polarity come into that? Because when I discussed, and I'm curious to hear what you have to say, when I discussed this with a friend of mine, I was like, you know what? It almost feels to me that this attachment style thing, it's almost like a different interpretation of how relationships are done. So it's around the kind of the same thing, like getting from basically switching, from what I understand, from anxious or avoidant to getting secure. Pretty much that's what we're doing now, because a lot of women, isn't that true that most women are actually anxious in their attachment style? And so getting to that secure, not necessarily, but I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, because this is just a theory of mine.
Yeah, look, my thoughts on that are that it's, that dance between anxious and avoidant is almost the same as the chase between the male and the female, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the goal of the female in this is not to keep doing the chase towards them. It's to allow them to come towards us. So it's finding your security, whatever that may be. And the security is often within yourself. It's not within the relationship, right? It's not ticking the boxes. I think, Anna, you said at the start, having a baby and getting married, like that doesn't just create the things. It's that work within yourself that creates the security, right? So yeah, my view on that is that it's the chase from the male is almost like he's stepping out of that avoidant, and he's running towards you. And if you're not running at him, it's not going to be a problem. And this is where polarity comes in. If you're running at him, what's going to happen? You're going to clash. You're going to hit. So it's, you do the work. If you're stepping back, if you're allowing yourself to just be and letting him come to you and let go of those anxieties, you'll find a space, a little circle of security. And that's where he'll come to you, and he'll get to tick his box of, the chase and being the male and doing his thing.
Right, yeah. Because that dance literally happens when a woman has that attachment style that is anxious, you run towards him. And because he's avoidant, he's running away, because he's no more attachment here. But when you lean back, and in our language of polarity, it's femininity, coming back to yourself, creating that security that also Stephanie mentioned. It's like you're leaning back into your security, so he doesn't need to run away anymore because you're not chasing him, so he's coming back to you. All right, well, now that I've covered that subject, I'm all good and I'm at peace with all the attachment styles. And so anyone who's done that and believes in that, then you can basically jump on the polarity wagon and work with us, because that covers that as well. All right, beautiful. Thank you so much, Amelia. We'll come back to you. Now we're going to beautiful Melanie. Melanie, let me just unmute you here. Oh, you need to unmute yourself. So I'm curious with you, Melanie, what have you been seeing with your man and his transformation, how he has been stepping up? And of course, for you guys, I mean, that is massive, like the news of having a baby, which I know were quite unexpected, and then, marriage in itself. And so for you, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest eye-opener in this whole journey was like I've talked about this with Anna before, is that everything felt very counterintuitive to me, like leaning back, as the other ladies have discussed. Like I know I have major control issues, and I still do, and I'm still working on that, but that has become so much better. For example, I used to pull all the work towards me, for example, at home, but also at work. I used to be that woman that just does it all. And I was really like martyring myself in a way, because I thought it's awesome, like, and I was hoping people would see how much I would be doing for them. And I think I was seeking for appreciation and love in many ways. That's actually something I recognized from my childhood, that I would use. Yeah, I used to do that a lot at home, also to get attention from my parents. I would do things for them, and I would be like the perfect daughter, hoping to get love and hoping to get affection. And I'd never thought about that before, and I never worked on that before. So all those things, of course, you take into your adulthood, into your relationship. So I think the biggest lesson for me in this whole journey was indeed to lean back and to stop doing it all. And that was super, super difficult, because I'm a control freak. I like to be in control. I like to have things done my way. And I think it's good, because I think my way is the right way most of the time. So when I started this journey, I remember I made lists of things that I would just like let go. For example, it could be something simple like, tonight I'm not going to suggest what we're going to have for dinner, or I'm not going to I'm not going to suggest like a holiday destination. I am just going to take some time for myself and just let it be. And that was the hardest part for me, to let it be part. And it took a while. It took a lot of patience, because of course there is some time in which your partner is also adjusting to your new style, right? So while I was leaning back, the partner was still like also leaning back. So there was like a leaning back phase where nothing was happening. And for me, this was a bit the moment where I got frustrated, and I was almost like, oh, is something going to happen? But then all of a sudden there was this momentum created, because there was space. And in that space, all of a sudden, I was still leaning back, but there was an opportunity for him to lean forward. And I think that space is where the magic happens in general. And that's what I learned. So now I also notice, like, the less that I do, the more that the other person can do for you. And that was such an eye-opening thing for me. And now, obviously, because I'm pregnant, there are a lot of things that I cannot do anymore, or I don't have the energy. Or I think Anna recognized this in the second trimester. You're kind of like, fuck it, I'm not going to do this. I don't have time for this attitude. And that is a great way to learn the hard way, that, you know, you can have your partner take up more space, do more things for you. But again, I agree with the other ladies that this is like a lifelong journey. I'm still like in the calls with Anna, even though I've been doing the program for a year. I still go on my mat, do my feminine flow regularly, because I still get caught up in my control issues, because they have been, you know, kind of controlling my life for so long. So it's something that I need to keep working on, but it has improved like for sure 80% or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually did not. I mean, I didn't think about the space in the way that you've described it, but you're absolutely right. And I know with you, we've had many conversations, Melanie, where it's like, keep on coming back to yourself. And that's the advice that you're now giving into, you know, to all the women in the program. It's like, focus on yourself. But I just want to mention that. I love how you said, when you lean back, right? So you start doing the work. It doesn't mean that he starts doing the work, right? And so he's also kind of leaning back, because he has been leaning back, because you have been doing all the work. So it's like, he's leaning back, now you're leaning back. And what happens? Like, nothing happens. You know, it's like there's this vacuum and this space that that is created. And the biggest challenge that a woman has in that moment is not to lean in again and start doing the things, because you think in that moment that this is not working, you know, or like whatever. And so, but if you stay long enough in that space, and in that space also the hardest thing is, there's going to be that period of time that's going to be different for everyone. But this is when I talk about you have to, like, it's you're going to hold your ground once, like in Stephanie's case, right? Like, hold your ground, do not do anything, do not become the man again or become the masculine. And when you hold that for long enough, that's actually a really big test for your relationship, for your man in general. And it works when you're single, because you will see, and I believe that probably depending on the man, any man will come around, right? Some men will need a lot more time. Some men will need less time. Some men will never get there. And this is the time, like, if you're in a relationship listening to this, I think I've told all of you, it's like two things might happen. Number one is that once you lean back and get into your feminine, he will step up and he will claim you as his woman and he'll take that masculine space. Or you will realize with time, and only you will decide what time that would be, that he does not have the capacity. But you will be certain and sure within yourself to move forward. But at least you've done the best you can to give him that chance. And so in all of your cases, obviously, your men have taken that space. But that space is also the time where you let them fail. And that is the biggest lesson that women have to learn, because there is that fear of like, oh my God, but how can I let him fail? You know, how can I let the dishes pile up? Or how can I let the plumbing go to hell? Well, you just do it, because once you learn the masculine journey and how men operate, that they do not learn from just telling things. They learn from falling down, from making the mistakes, from the apartment being flooded. And that's when they learn. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the hardest thing. But once you are in that space for long enough, you will see that your men will start claiming that space. And of course, having a baby now, Melanie, for you, I mean, this is like the ultimate polarity play.
Yeah, and I think also like something that I learned through the program a lot is asking for help. I thought that asking for help was like really bad thing. It would show my weakness. I would be vulnerable. I would be someone that couldn't do it on her own. But I actually noticed that when you ask a man for help, they love helping you. Like, they love it and they enjoy it, and it makes them feel confident, makes them feel appreciated and respected. So that is something I do a lot more as well. And I've learned that it's really, really nice. Like, it's really also created more polarity in that sense.
Okay, beautiful. And for you, Melanie, I'll ask this to Amelia and Stephanie. What is the future holding for you? I mean, you're still doing your flow, you're still doing all of this, you're attending our calls, which is amazing, which is a bonus all of you have with lifetime access, obviously, to the program. But what is your plan for, obviously, you're going to become a mother in a few months, but what is really, like, when you look forward in this work and doing the work, what is your plan for continuing, or next steps, or what are you aspiring, looking forward to?
So for me, it's first of all, because of this program, I just have been obsessed with femininity, masculinity, polarity. I think like all the ladies in the program, actually. So my plan is to keep working on that and keep studying that. One of the things is that I've also signed up for an embodiment course that Anna recommended, and I'm a coach, and I'm really planning to use that in my work and also with Anna. And for the rest, I also, I want to keep doing my flow regularly. I don't want to lose it. And in terms of future plans, like, I didn't dare to say this in the past, but I'm just really excited about becoming a mom and like starting a family and, you know, like, I don't know, cooking beautiful dishes in my home, dressing femininely. I also got into this really rabbit hole of like feminine clothing and makeup, and I'd never kind of dug into that before, but now I'm like really excited to learn more about fashion and creativity and maybe starting a painting class. So I'm just really excited about embracing my feminine side in that sense.
So beautiful. And I love that Stephanie and Melanie, both of you are on the call, obviously, who have started. And I know, Stephanie, you're practicing this further, but we're talking about the Feminine Embodiment Coaching certification that quite a few women in the program have signed up for and going forward. So I'm just saying this, you know, because this is going to be on the podcast for pretty much forever, and there's going to be a video of this. So I bet, just like what I told you, you know, there's women in the program who's like, hi, Bonnie, hi, Andrea. I bet that, you know, if we end up working together, obviously, if one of you becomes, obviously, Amelia as well, you're all in the program. So I'm sure you're going to see women being like, I listened to that interview, that's why I signed up. But particularly for those of you like Melanie and Stephanie who are continuing to work with that, and if you become part of, you know, my team, then you might have women on the call who would be like, oh my God, Melanie, I heard your interview and now you're like coaching me and supporting me in the program. So That's amazing. So thank you. And yeah, get ready for the nesting phase in your third trimester, because things are going to really, really shift. And I'm looking forward to you sharing that in the group with other women, because it's a beautiful journey to witness. All right. Thank you so much, Melanie. Let's move on back to Emilia. So, Emilia, for you, two questions I want to ask Emilia and Stephanie, so that before we wrap up. Number one, Melanie inspired me to ask this question is because we talk about all of the success and, you know, a little bit of hard moments as well, but I think it's so important to talk about the challenges. And what is your current challenge at the moment that you're struggling with in this work, and how are you tackling that? And why I ask this is because when you work with me, I constantly tell you I'm a woman like you. You know, there's nothing better, nothing worse. I'm just a few steps ahead in this journey, and I have the tools and the guidance, and I can support you in that way. But I'm also a woman, and I'm also dealing with burnout and all of that, you know. So where are you currently on this journey? What is your biggest challenge, and how are you, like, what are the steps that you're taking to tackle that?
Look, with everything, there's ups and downs. So my biggest challenge is consistency. Occasionally I just get caught up with work. I'm working quite hard at the moment, and it's from home, which is incredibly challenging. So I find that I experience times of resistance where I, you know, switch into that masculine mode while I'm working, and, you know, work might go a bit late, and the next morning I get up, I forget to do my flow because I'm kind of thinking about work. Well, I don't forget. I know that I've forgotten to do my flow, and I just go on to work, and it's almost like a resistance. So that's been the most difficult thing for me, and I find that it comes in periods of quite severe stress when there's a lot going on, and that's when we need it the most. So I've found that having a tool, so for me it's my journaling, realigns me. So as soon as I'm feeling this resistance, if I bring out my journal and I start to write, why am I feeling resistance? What's going on? Then the rest of it comes. Like, next thing, I wake up the next day, I get into my feminine flow, I do my meditation, everything sort of falls back into place. So I think consistency is the most difficult thing for anything, but it's like going to the gym and building muscles. You've got to build your feminine flow muscles. And once you've got them, and, you know, you start flexing them, you can, you're kind of on a roll. But if you don't work them and you don't flex them, then they're going to go away, aren't they?
Yeah, I love it. Build your feminine flow muscles. I love it. Okay, cool. And what's for you in the future, Emilia? I mean, in the context of this work, and what are you really looking forward to, and how is that continuing for you?
Yeah, look, for me, it's first things first. We've been in pretty heavy lockdown in Melbourne, so I'm actually looking forward to coming out of that lockdown and, like what Melanie said, letting him do things. I previously, before all of this lockdown, I mean, it's been since March for us, so the last time that we're able to, like, plan a date was back in February, when things were very fresh again. So for me, I'm just going to let him do it. And he's already talking about it. He's saying, oh, as soon as we're allowed out, like, I can't wait to take you to, you know, on a road trip, and we're going to go on a weekend away to here, and I can't wait to go and stay on a farm property with you, and we'll wake up to alpacas and chickens. And yeah, so that for me is just letting go, just being. And I see a future now. I had a lot of anxiety in this relationship for many, many reasons, and it was just so incredibly hard for me at the start to see a future. And, you know, people would ask me, well, do you see a future with him? And I'm like, well, I've never felt this way about anyone, so of course. But I couldn't visualize a future. And now, after putting in all of this work, I actually see a future. I shut my eyes sometimes when I'm in my flow, and I can actually picture being married to him. I can picture having a home with him, and me, Miss I'll never be a mum, can picture having a child with him. And that feeling actually, you know, it makes me warm and fuzzy, as lame as that sounds. If you spoke to me 6 months ago, and, you know, if, like, I did write a blog article on my challenges with the idea of pregnancy and motherhood, it's a really big thing for me. I've always resisted motherhood and found it as a weakness, and that's in my future, and I can feel it in my future, and I'm actually excited about it now. I'm not resisting it, and not repelling it either.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's another truth bomb you just dropped on me that I didn't know about.
Yeah.
You gotta well, I know it's like, oh yeah, posting in the Facebook, but I'd love to hear that, Amelia, because that's huge. Because I read that blog post and I told you
Yeah.
post it so we can discuss it.
I will post it actually. I should still do that.
Yeah, because it's such a big conversation, and I really wanted actually to respond to you and the whole group. And what I wanted to tell you, and I'm going to tell you now, is that I have been that woman, that never wanted. Well, it's not that I never wanted to have children, but children for me were somewhere there. I don't know where. It's just something that a woman does. I didn't have that craving or desire or whatever. And for me, once you are with a man who evokes those feelings within you, but it's really interesting because you start the work and then he comes forward and then the evocation happens, and the moment that I did give birth to a baby and that I got pregnant, so many of these limiting beliefs just vanished, and I know I was like you, looking at these moms being obsessed with, I still with other children, I do not care about other children, literally toddlers. Now I see babies and my heart just warms up so much and I want to cry because I'm craving a second one. That's the only reason. But all of these toddlers, I couldn't give a shit about all these toddlers and little children. But I do care about mine so much so that I decided now that, oh my God, I'm working too much and I do not spend time with her. I'm missing her so much during the day, so that I decided to take actually Mondays off and so go back, because 6 months ago I was like, oh yeah, can't wait for her to be in daycare full time. And now I'm like, no, I have a child and I'm missing everything. And so now I'm actually stepping back and taking a day off. But so many things have changed for me where I was like, oh my God, this is the biggest accomplishment that I have ever done. Honestly, hands down, I could turn away from everything. And my sister told me this when I gave birth, and I was like, what? When I gave birth, I was like, what? Biggest accomplishment? Are you kidding me? No. My biggest accomplishment is blah, 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 certificates, business, blah, blah. And 3 months later, I was like, oh my God, my body just produced a child and pushed it out of my vagina. And this is the best thing ever. And just watching a tiny baby and the whole process of seeing, I wrote a post about this, obviously, I think you even read it, but watching her becoming a human is just incredible. Just the whole process of there was nothing, there was just me and my man and our love, and now there is a human running around, putting words together, understanding the world, learning to walk. It was crazy. The biggest thing that blew my mind, and I want to produce a couple more of these experiences. Now I want to share with you, that has been my journey in the last 2 months for me. All I want is to make babies now. I don't care about anything else. I'm like, string, please drive this ship. I don't care. You tell me what to do, I'll follow. It's a crazy thing. And obviously I'm becoming 32. There's biology working, but biology is so strong in us women. You have no idea how many women are in this program who are like, everything I want is women are, it's just insane. And for me, I'm like, I don't care about anything else. I just want you to insert a baby in my body. That's it. That's all I want. And it's insane, me just saying that. There is something that biologically happens in us women, especially when you had one. You're this is just the best thing ever. I just want to make babies all day, every day. And then they start having a tantrum and you're like, I'm not sure about that, but, I can deal with this.
And Anna, the beautiful thing is that I've discovered is it's all about trusting the process, and that's what I wasn't doing. I was not trusting him. I was not trusting anything in the beginning. And now I trust that it's perfectly okay to put a pause on career, to trust in him and to be a mother, that's okay. So that's my biggest takeaway from that.
And it's so beautiful that you have such a man by your side. This is why in the program so adamant about create polarity from the beginning. Because if you do that, I mean, for all of you, it was not in the beginning, but even if you're in a relationship, things can shift forward, because then when you have that masculine man by your side, you can trust that you'll be taken care of when you have a baby, and you can just, for example, put a pause on your career if you wanted to. You don't have to, but you have that security by your side that you have a man who you can totally trust to do what needs to be done. You're not going to starve, die or whatever. So, so beautiful. Thanks so much, Emilia. Moving forward to Stephanie. Stephanie, what is your current biggest challenge, and how are you dealing with that? And then, I'll ask you about the future, but real quick about, do you have any challenges that you're dealing with at the moment, and in this work, and how you're dealing with that now? Or are you just on a high of after the next achievement unlocked? You got to unmute yourself, Stephanie.
Oh no, there's no such thing as a total high. Although, things of, I'm pretty excited about. I have to laugh because I thought, anyone that's watching this video is going to think that I'm just on a loop, nodding along with everything that that everyone else has said. Like, every point that they've made is totally relevant to my life. So I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm nodding at every moment. I think at this point, I've just about nailed consistency. That was definitely a struggle, and as well, just again readjusting. For example, throughout the day, if I'm feeling as emotions, or anything like that, is to stop, and basically do a flow if things are really, really sort of unbalanced. So I've really sort of started to nail that. It's become really important, a real priority for me the last couple of weeks, to set up that routine, so that's been my recent challenge, and I feel so much better now that it's established. So that's been my recent challenge. I think maybe the other challenge, which it kind of ties into what's going to happen in the future, is that partially because of the current situation, but really a lot more because of the shift that's occurred within me, is that, my career is, I've completely rethought my career, and what I'm going to do next. And because I have had time off, frankly, completely out of work for the moment. So been at home, and which has been great, because it really means I can focus on this, this femininity work, this polarity work. And I think that's probably why I've seen great results, is because I've really had the space to do the work. But it is kind of coming time to make a decision about whether to go back to what I was previously doing. And the sort of answer within me, the response is within me is no. But I don't know what, so that's sort of sitting with not knowing, and so that's probably my biggest challenge at the moment. So funnily enough, whereas a month ago I would have said, this sort of not knowing about my relationship would have been my sort of biggest challenge to sit with. Now it's sort of sitting with this other area of my life that I don't know what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, and that's a big one that I'm actually seeing that in a lot of women who join the program. And that's kind of normal, Stephanie, for so many women. And I encourage you to put that into our group and to ask other women and what they've done and what they've experienced. Because once you start doing this work, you basically, you're breaking all the patterns that were there before, and there's new parts of you coming out where you're like, you know what, I'm not available for that anymore. That doesn't make me happy anymore, and I want to live a different life. I want to do it differently. So that's pretty common. It doesn't mean you need to go all the way and shift your careers 100%, but it's definitely looking for ways on how can you show up more of who you are and what to do there. So I'm happy to support you there as well, because in Module 5, as you know, towards the end of the program, we talk about that. We talk about feminine leadership. We talk about motherhood. We talk about an embodied way of life as a feminine essence woman. So, yeah, excited to see what's going to happen there, Stephanie. And, well, I mean, obviously, like, my next question was, like, what are you looking forward to in terms of this work? And I guess with your man, and obviously you're in the uncertainty with your career, but in terms of, like, femininity, relationships, feminine embodiment, what's in the future for you? What's coming up?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm enrolled to take on the coaching certification for feminine embodiment, and as Melanie said, the word for it is obsessed. I'm totally obsessed, and I'm totally excited. So I'm really excited to be, sort of embracing that, and and that's been really, that's been driving me. I'm really excited, and it's why, even though I have this challenge around my career, I'm not actually as stressed. I don't feel like I have to race out and make a bad decision or go back to anything, because I'm so excited for this to be a focal point coming up, this coaching certification, and even as I enrolled in this, I said, I don't know what the result of this is. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm just really, really excited to go through the process. So that's my happy, excited future.
Beautiful. And with your man, what are you looking forward
to
that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing where he decides to have us live, or what we kind of what we do in the future, and we'll I'm not pushing him for anything further than sort of what he's laid out, but there is talk about sort of marriage and something like that, and family in the future, but I'm gonna let him sort of feel his way and come to me with what he's thinking.
I gotta tell you, ladies, I told Melanie already, obviously we're in COVID, so all of you have an excuse, but whenever a wedding happens, which I'm still, even if it doesn't happen, Anna Rova is gonna be, I hope Anna Rova is gonna be on the at least in the top 10. Okay, well, that's feminine friends. I'll go into the top 50. That's fine. I want to be on the guest list because I haven't been on a wedding in a really long time. So actually in three. No. Well, anyway, so I'm expecting an invitation. Just putting it out there. Okay, great. So last question for all of you. We're wrapping up. I'd love to hear. So for all the women listening, right? So there are women listening to this, and there's a lot of women listening to this who will be probably watching and listening. What would be your message to her of why, whether she's curious about this work, whether she's heard on my podcast, has a challenge, obviously, trying to figure it out. And even you can think of yourself, like, I don't know, 4 months ago, 9 months ago, a year ago. What would you tell her about taking the step and, signing up for a discovery call, but even like signing up for the program, right? Because there's a lot of women on the fence looking for options and things like that who are struggling and really trying to find an answer. What would you tell her, and why would you recommend basically, signing up for a call and then applying for a call, obviously, at girlskill.com/apply, and then joining the program? So we'll start with Melanie. Let me just unmute.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
I would say if you identify with things that we've discussed and that we've said, and you're ready to kind of shift your life and also do the work, and you're ready to feel more balanced and more healthy, more communicative in relationships, and also just to attract the best that you can get, then I would say you gotta sign up, because I think the evidence is here that all of us three ladies have seen amazing results. And it's also like, let's be honest, it's a lot of fun doing this program. It's hard too, because you get like all those annoying things in your face that you've avoided for years. But it's also a lot of fun, like just as Stephanie said, and I think Emilia said it as well, like we've become so interested and obsessed in this topic of polarity and men and relationships, and we've discovered this whole other side of ourselves. So if you add all of those things up, why wouldn't you do this? Like, go for it.
Oh, amazing. Thanks so much, Melanie. Emilia, what is your message to women?
My message is, if you're investing money in, the gym, in your health, in doing all those other things, why wouldn't you invest in yourself on a mental level and on a feminine level? This is completely different to anything else. I've read books, I listened to podcasts, including Anna's podcast. I thought that I was doing the work, and it turns out I wasn't. It took a bit of a shit show, excuse my language, and things really blowing up and hitting rock bottom to realize that I had not been doing the work. And coming on board for this has just been absolutely life-changing, and it's been a constant reminder that, any investment into yourself on that level is the most important investment above and beyond anything else. Put aside everything that you're doing with your beauty treatments, with the gym, take a pause on that. Well, you don't have to take a pause on that, but if you just pause that for a moment and invest in something like this, it will reap its rewards. It will show way better results, trust me. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. Well, I got to pause on that, Emilia, because we are. I mean, this is an investment for a lot of women. It's a big investment, and I don't take it lightly. I do understand it, and we do have, with a lot of women, we do have that money conversation because it's important. But I think you're so right. I mean, let's be honest. Most of the women here in the program, we actually just had an enrollment last week from a woman from China. So she actually is living in China, so that's exciting. But I mean, for her, this was a huge investment. But when we really look at how much we are spending on ourselves, every month, and you look at and then you look at what you're going to get out of this, it's like, to me, obviously, it's a no-brainer. It's like you can't not do this, because when you get to the other side and you have men, and I mean, it's not even about men, I mean, that's like such an amazing benefit, like attracting amazing men, being in a relationship with a man who can take charge, who you can trust, who will pay for your rent. I mean, if we're talking about money, it's like you're investing in yourself now. I saved tons of money when I started living together with my man, and then we put it all into a wedding, which is obviously a great investment too. But yeah, like the investment conversation is so important, and I truly believe that this is, I mean, it's so worth it. And I honestly don't know what is the price that you put on finally freaking just relaxing. And like Stephanie said, everything came together and it makes sense, not trying to be easy, just alleviating yourself from the headache and getting into a community of women and getting to know yourself. So that's the biggest step that you can take today. So awesome. Thanks so much, Emilia. And last but not least, Stephanie, what would you tell women listening? You're going to unmute yourself.
Yeah, well, absolutely agree with what everyone has said. Absolutely, and one of the things that you always say when someone brings up a question, for example, in the group or in any of our sessions, is you already have the answer inside of you. If you're asking the question, the answer is inside of you. And so, even though we obviously hone that ability that we all have, you, as someone who's maybe sort of thinking about enrolling, might not realize that. But if you're, as Melanie said, if you're talking to Anna, or if you're reading her articles and something really is resonating, and you're asking yourself, you're tossing it up, the answer is inside of you. but and if you do enroll, if you do sort of take that step, you'll find that tapping into that is very easy to do. It becomes, and your whole internal landscape changes. So if you are asking yourself this question as you're sort of in the webinars and things like that, and in the exploration calls, the answer is probably inside you already, and all you have to do is embrace it. So if you're asking the question, you're probably already drawn to it, and it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. Your intuition is right. It's amazing. So yeah, do it.
Do it. That's right. All right. So everyone just should go to girlskill.com/apply, and then you're going to see an application there that's going to lead you to the schedule page where you can book your call with one of my team members, and let's get you rolling. And then, as I said, ladies, expect women in the group being like, Melanie, Amelia, Stephanie, I listened to your interview and I signed up. So I really want to thank all three of you. I am so proud of you. And so grateful that you're doing the work, and you're such amazing ambassadors for the work. And what I do because of women like you. You've brought me to tears multiple times and things like that. It's just like, sometimes I'm like, whoa, like, what did I, it's really bizarre, because I created this process based on this experience, and obviously I didn't know what would be the ripple effect. And just reading your stories and and hearing you say this, and your men showing up, and now you like want to have babies, and you're married, and I'm like, what's going on, And I always, after the roundtable calls, String is now home with a baby, and I'm like, I just can't freaking believe it. It's also for me, I have so much certainty already in this process, obviously, because so many women have gone through this, but I just day in and day out, and I had a really shitty day today, and I knew that to come on this call, again, I had a shitty day when I did my first roundtable. I guess I'm intuitively scheduling these calls when I had really bad days, and then it's like so I really want to thank you for showing up and for doing the work and for becoming so obsessed about this, because I'm obsessed about this. This is the best thing ever. So yeah, thank you so much, ladies. Good luck with everything. Obviously, we'll see you in the group, in the call, in the work, and some of you perhaps are going to join our team as coaches, maybe as discovery call people. You're the best people that I'd love to work with, because obviously you're the best ambassadors and you've seen results. So let's just say goodbye. Amelia, Melanie, if you want to unmute yourself and say goodbye, and then we'll finish off.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It's been loads of fun.
Thank you, guys.
Same here. Big hug to all the ladies out there.
All right. Thanks so much, ladies. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.